going on, you guys? It's your boy Patrick, aka Addicted to Combat, and I'm back after a week off of UFC action. Talking Bellator last week just was not the same. I missed talking UFC fights with you guys, so we're back. A 13-fight UFC Apex card here with Mackenzie Dern and Yan Xiaonan in the main event for UFC Vegas 61. One of these early Apex start times, and for the first time ever, we'll be doing a live stream fight companion to go with these fights start to finish on Saturday afternoon on Blood Money MMA Bets channel. Me, Cody, and Johnny K. Picks will be on there just, shooting this shit, hanging out, commentating the fights, watching our bets cash, and hanging out with you guys on live stream. So go give Cody from Blood Money MMA Bets a subscribe if you have not. I'll be over there on Saturday when the prelims start. Also, this week on Wednesday, my live stream for this fight card will be a little bit later than usual, 11 p.m. Central Time, to accommodate my guest, Wiz Bets, a very sharp guy over there on MMA Twitter. He does have a YouTube page as well. He bets all sports, and we're going to be talking about mixed martial arts. And once all the props have dropped for this card, we'll have some good betting insight for these fights. So I've got some money lines placed on this one already, and I will point those out as we get through the card. So without further ado, let's break into it. Okay, kicking off the card, we've got a women's strawweight bout between Tabitha Ricci and Jessica Penne. Penne is, of course, on short notice here. She just fought back in July on the Long Island card, where she lost to the debuting Emily Ducote, got doubled up on significant strikes, and that happens to her often, and she really didn't have any success with the takedowns in that fight. So, 39 years old, she's been around Invicta in the UFC for a long time, and she's a BJJ black belt, and it's no secret when you watch her fight. Very poor striking defense, just wants to get this fight to the mat, sometimes even just backpacking her opponents, jumping on them off of the clinch on the cage, and a lot of times she's willing to, fall to her back and just hope that opponents follow her into her guard, where she can employ arm bars from that position, get good reversals in the ground, and usually has these awkward scrambles on the ground where she ends up on top and rides out control time. She got a very controversial win over Lupi Godinez recently from that same strategy. The botched takedowns of Lupi Godinez. Sometimes Penne would end up on top and just ride out that position, get the control time, win the fight by a very close decision. Tabitha Ricci also has these same skills. She's been a judo player her whole life, BJJ black belt her whole life. Her only loss in her 7-1 record for Tabitha Ricci is to Manon Fiorot in a short notice debut up a weight class. So since then, she's had a perfect record, coming off of a couple of wins back to back. And she goes relentlessly for those takedowns. She's got very good judo throws, good single leg takedowns in space, good level change ability. Sometimes it takes her a little bit to get that timing and that element of surprise to get those takedowns. Doesn't always do a great job of setting up her takedowns with the boxing, but a very comfortable striker, even as a smaller woman here at 5'1" and lacking 5 inches in reach. I don't think that's going to play a factor here for Jessica Penne, who never uses her reach to, aid her striking defense. Tabitha Ricci is very good at rushing in, sprinting in range with, that short MMA fighter combination, that jab, overhand right, very powerful, finds its mark for Ricci. She'll crash into clinch range. And, the judo throws, the good clinch knees, anything to soften up her opponent to get the takedown, and then her work does not stop there. She's got very good elbows from top position and softens up her opponent with ground and pound while seeking the submission. So either way, she's got the top control time, the striking and damage, and then maybe she'll get the submission. She only has 2 of them so far in her 9 fights. Jessica Penne, of course, has been around the block, 20 professional fights, going 14-6. Across Invicta and the UFC, and she's got 8 submissions for Jessica Penne. So obviously, you could probably give her the BJJ experience there, just since she's been successful with it. But usually it's opponents like Karolina Kowalkiewicz followed her to the ground, got trapped up in the armbar. I think Tabitha Ricci is sound enough defensively on the ground to avoid getting finished here. Obviously, the threat of a submission from that position for Penne is live, but I think it's very negligible. Right now, she's about a plus 185 underdog against Jessica Penne. Tabitha Ricci has moved up to minus 215, and I took a stab on Ricci's money line at minus 185. Right now, I would say when the prop drops, look for her by decision. Tabitha Ricci is live to get a TKO stoppage, down the stretch of this fight. I think her cardio is better, and as I mentioned, she transitions to mount very well and gets range those elbows and punches down on her opponents while seeking the submission. So I'd say the takedown ability in wrestling goes in the favor of Ricci. Her aggression and striking is, way far and away better than Penne's. She's got that 12-year youth advantage. And she's got, the cardio is on point. The youth is on point. I just see a lot of ways Ricci wins this fight. Very much the minute winner. It's only going to be one slip up and like a submission victory I see happening for Penne. in this fight. So give me Ricci pretty confidently. I would look for that decision prop for Ricci when those drop. Up next is a very interesting heavyweight fight for a couple of reasons. Not only is it a fun clash of styles between a wrestler and a BJJ fighter, but Alexei Oleinik is currently the oldest man on the roster at 45 years old. But where this becomes interesting against Ilir Latifi is that Latifi's not that much younger. He's 39, and he spent his entire career at light heavyweight, aside from his past 2 fights where he's gone 1-1 at heavyweight. He snapped his losing streak against Tanner Boser in a very close split decision where he pretty much just edged it out by being on top position for most of the fight. And that's what Latifi wants to do. He's a Swedish wrestler, Swedish Greco-Roman, Swedish submission fighter from a long time ago. His striking output is so embarrassingly low. He lost a decision to Derek Lewis because he only landed 5 significant strikes over 3 rounds. You've got to be super low output to lose a decision to Derek Lewis. It's laughable. If you look at his fights, even most recently against Tanner Boser, he won that split decision over 3 rounds. 10 significant strikes. Before that, Ozdemir at 18. Significant strikes landed in a 2-round fight where he was finished. So not a very dangerous guy to end the fight. Because he throws so little. He wants to get the fight to the ground. He'll out-wrestle you, top control time, to a decision win. That's pretty much how he does his business. Now, Alexei Oleinik wants to get this fight to the ground, and he doesn't mind being on bottom position here. He's got the Ezekiel choke from top when his opponents are on top. He can even, use some sort of leg sweep or any sort of scramble ability to get this fight where he's in top position, and he'll seek to get that very basic judo move. It's called the keisei gatame. It's one of the first things you learn in judo, just a simple head and arm choke from the top position. He actually got Mirko Krokop with that before coming to the UFC, the last man to defeat Mirko Krokop, and he's employed that time and time again. The only guy that's escaped that move, I believe, has been Derek Lewis, just had too big of a head and shoulders to get choked, so eventually Oleinik gave it up after like a minute of squeezing him. The things that are troubling about Oleinik is, he's 45 years old. His striking defense very poor, pretty much relies on head movement, and he's not very fast anymore. He does have some dangerous striking, though, honestly. Like, he's got a very powerful overhand right, and with an 80-inch reach, 7 inches of reach advantage, those sloppy left-to-right hooks are long enough to find their mark on Latifi, and they do damage. I mean, they're mostly to get in range to clinch up and get the fight to the ground for Oleinik, but he's knocked out Gerald Rosholt with that left hook. He's knocked down Travis Brown, club and subbed him with that left hook. So he is a dangerous guy, and Latifi's a small heavyweight, not a very powerful puncher, not, even throwing enough punches to, have that punch land at very high success rates. So I gotta say, I'm gonna take the stab at Oleinik here. I have not gotten there on the money line. He's plus 155 for Oleinik, minus 180, minus 190 for Latifi. I get it. Latifi's the younger guy here, but come on. I mean, when you really look at this matchup, Latifi's just not dangerous enough to get this fight, to end it inside the distance or to even win a decision here. Alexei Oleinik, I could see getting the reversal on the ground, ending up on top, or just subbing him. So give me Oleinik, round 1 submission. He's had 47 submissions. In the UFC, he's got 9 wins. And, out of his, 47 submissions, only 1 has ever been in round 3, I believe. So by the time he gets to round 3, his gas tank is pretty much depleted. So that's an issue. If it gets to round 3, I'd say Latifi brings this fight home and gets a boring decision win. But Oleinik is live to get the finish in rounds 1 or rounds 2, or even possibly edge out those rounds in control time positions and striking activity, and then win the fight based on 2 rounds to 1, 29-28. So I'm seeing a win for Oleinik here at 45 years old. I'm not sure if I'm crazy enough to bet on that just yet, but I just might when the props drop. So watch out for the props in this one. Dog or pass, give me Oleinik to get up next. Another battle between pretty old guys for the weight class. This is at 205 pounds light heavyweight. Maxim Grishin taking on Felipe Lins. Currently, Maxim Grishin is a moderate favorite, minus 165, minus 170. Felipe Lins about plus 140, plus 145, the underdog. Both of these guys have some things in common. They're both former heavyweights, although a little bit smaller. They were both in the PFL where they both had some success. Felipe Lins certainly had the better run in the PFL. He won the tournament at heavyweight in 2018. Very good run there, 4-0 on the season in 2018 with 4 finishes. Some of them were not without a little bit of adversity, but he likes to get into wars, does Felipe Lins. He's probably going to be the better, stronger grappler in this fight at the weight class. But he's slow, plodding. He's kind of battle-worn with a lot of injuries at this point. Pulls out of a lot of fights, which I'll point on. His best weapons are those big overhand rights, big winging hooks, big man techniques that are just trying to end the fight. And his striking defense, not very good. He can be counter-struck when he's plotting forward aggressively. So a little bit more of the aggressive guy, wanting to push the pace and move forward. Maxim Grishin, a willing dance partner, usually elusively dances around the perimeter of the cage, looking to counter-strike. But again, Maxim Grishin, a kind of a shell of his former self. Some of his best days and best wins are behind him. At heavyweight, always a small guy around that 220, 230, weight mark. Now he's at 205, struggles to make that weight from time to time. And, he's coming off the William Knight win. But yeah, he's kind of not been the best guy. His best win is probably over Alexander Volkov way back in Russia when he was in M1, I believe that promotion was in, where he got a submission win. So he's a guy who's mostly a kickboxer, is Grishin. Like I said, counter striker, very low output, which is scary in this fight. I think he does find his mark on Felipe Lins at some point, but getting outworked in the clinch has always been a problem for him. Again, mostly up at heavyweight, but at 205, I can see that problem still plaguing him against Felipe Lins. So, Maxim Grishin does have some ground, know-how as well. He does look for the club and sub at times. He'll, snatch up a neck and grab the back of his opponents if he does get them hurt. But, I don't know. This is a fight where even at this price tag, this looks like a spot where I would be one to look for Maxim Grishin on the money line. Not a bad price, but he's just so low output that I could see Felipe Lins doing what Lins just did against Marcin Prachnio, getting that cage control time, avoiding danger, and winning the fight purely off of control time mostly. But again, going back to the Felipe Lins side, now he's pulled out of a lot of fights. He pulled out of, he's been finished in 4 of 5 losses. One of those times was in Bellator due to him just throwing a strike and his knee blew out. Since then, I think that same knee issue has plagued him trouble. He pulled out of Dontel Mays in 2020 for a knee injury, pulled out of the Ben Rothwell fight last year 3 times. One was the day of for like a weight cutting issue as well. Then he pulled out of Azamat Mirzakhanov's fight most recently last December. So we'll see if he makes it to this fight. I'm not sure. He's a very untrustworthy guy with making these scheduled bouts. But, I'll give him the wrestling. I'll give him the size. I'll give him the grappling and things. But Maxim Grishin, certainly the cleaner striker, more powerful striker. He's got that power, that durability, and more experience overall as well over better opponents. So I see a round 2 TKO for Maxim Grishin. I think if he avoids the early danger, starts finding his timing and his mark with the punches, in round 1 or round 2 at the latest, I think he gets Felipe Lins out of there. If this goes to the decision, though, and Maxim Grishin is falling behind on the numbers, it could be a Lins decision. So looking at Lins decision, looking at Grishin inside the distance, probably look for the inside the distance prop on Maxim Grishin. If that's a high enough number, like a nice plus 150 or something like that, I would go for it. Not sure what the price will be because, as I mentioned, I don't know to bet the overs or unders in this fight. I think if you're on the Lins side, it's going to go over. The Grishin side probably goes under. So no bet so far for me, but give me Maxim Grishin to win this fight by knockout. Okay, up next at lightweight, we've got Joaquim Silva and Jesse Ronson. I forgot Joaquim Silva was even on the UFC's roster. It's been about a year and a half, I believe, since we saw him get knocked out in 40 seconds by Rick Glenn. And that's the problem with Joaquim Silva recently, as we've seen he's, of course, this normally an orthodox, sometimes a switch stance Muay Thai fighter from Brazil. Very powerful high kicks, powerful strikes, but he can load up. I think against Rick Glenn, if I remember correctly, loaded up that left shoulder, cocked back that wide right hook, and got beat to the punch by the left hand of Rick Glenn. So put him out in like 40 seconds. Before that, I think he had gotten knocked out maybe for the first time by Nasrat Haqparast, again facing a southpaw striker. He got put out cold by that left straight. So he's having trouble with these left-handed strikes. And never really, he does have that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, I believe, but we don't really see it in the UFC. He is 11-3 with 6 knockouts, 2-1 in decisions. And Joaquim Silva just has been so inactive, I really don't know what to think of him anymore. Jesse Ronson, not much more active. This is Ronson's his second stint in the UFC. He did have an unsuccessful 0-3 stint back in like 2012 to 14, somewhere in that range. I believe he had to fight, he fought Francisco Trinaldo, I remember, I think Michel Prazeres, I want to say, and there's one other person he had fought that gave him some trouble there. I can't remember quite who it was, but the fact of the matter is he's a Canadian kickboxer. He's got some submission skills, but the wrestling defense is really what kills him in these fights. Kevin Lee was the third guy that he fought in his first stint. Once I brought up wrestling, I remember that's what cost him victories in those fights. He lost all three of those guys I mentioned, all by split decision. So he's a very capable kickboxer, but then he gets out control timed, out positioned on the mat. So that's why it leads to these close fights. So nothing much has really changed except for he comes back a little bit more active this time. He did have a 2-year-long layoff after he did get that win over Nicholas Dalby in 2020. It was overturned because he got caught with D-ball in his system, a very effective oral steroid. Usually clears your system fast, but I think they're having quicker tests for that now. But got caught with that, overturned to no contest. But he got a club and sub, a very nice southpaw kickboxer he is, a good counter striker. Straight left on the pipe, knocks down Nicholas Dalby, who's very tough, and he got submitted by rear naked choke. Comes in now 2 years later this summer against Rafa Garcia, and got rear naked choked himself. So taken down again. So Joaquim Silva's not really like a takedown artist, a takedown threat historically. God only knows what version of Joaquim Silva we get, but at this price tag, we're getting Jesse Ronson at plus 115, minus 135, favorite for Joaquim Silva. I don't know why. This should be a pick 'em at worst. Give me Jesse Ronson here, the underdog, to come through. I think he gets another round 2 club and sub. Again, the southpaw strikes have been giving Joaquim Silva concern recently, so give me another, straight left down the pipe, countering one of the wild strikes of Joaquim Silva, knocks him down, and Jesse Ronson locks up that RNC. He does have 7 submissions on his record. Kind of a well-known trick he has up his sleeve, so... yeah, I never thought... I'm probably not going to bet on this fight. Jesse Ronson, I expect to win here, but not very much confidence. Again, we don't know what version of Joaquim Silva we're getting. Okay, up next, we have a catchweight bout in the women's division between Julia Stoliarenko and Chelsea Chandler. Chandler is making her debut. 4-1 record, all 5 fights taking place in Invicta. She last weighed in at 145 pounds. We're meeting in the middle here between bantamweight and featherweight on short notice for the debuting Chelsea Chandler, who fights out of Cesar Gracie Jiu-Jitsu in Stockton, California. She's pretty even on her finishing so far. 1 TKO, 1 rear naked choke. She is one of these fighters that wants to, kind of lumber in range. She's a thicker girl for 145. She's aggressive to strike. It's very sloppy, not very tight or technical, but she gets in range. She likes to clinch up against the cage, get the fight to the mat, and play jiu-jitsu as you would expect fighting out of that gym. But, that's going to go right into the wheelhouse of Stoliarenko, so it's a little concerning. Right now, the money line is complete pick'em, minus 110 to minus 110. You've got Chandler coming in on a 4-fight win streak, only losing her debut. Stoliarenko was, just snapped a 3-fight losing streak with a round 1 submission over Jessica Rose Clark. That is the specialty of Stoliarenko. That is the exact kryptonite for Rose Clark. So a good win there nonetheless over the summer. She does have, Stoliarenko is a Lithuanian submission fighter, high-level BJJ. She's got that one trick, which is getting the fight to the mat and finding a way to scramble her way into a round 1 armbar. She has 6 of them out of her 10 MMA wins. So I don't know. I don't like the fact that Chelsea Chandler is... a purple belt in BJJ and likes to clinch up on the cage, play jiu-jitsu, lay on her opponents. Now, she is a bigger girl at 145. Could she just lay and pray her way to safety and win minutes here with some ground and pound? That's a possibility. I don't know enough about her. I watched her fights, but low-level competition for the most part. And Stoliarenko does have that UFC experience. She's been there 4 times, and she has that finishing ability. So... complete pick'em. I can't bet on this fight. I don't have enough information on either girl. I don't want to trust Stoliarenko, but if you're going to, my bet for this would be round 1 submission for Stoliarenko. Kind of writes itself. I like the experience. They're both equally kind of sloppy on the feet, but the weight class thing is throwing me off. The short notice thing is throwing me off, and I just don't know that much about Chelsea Chandler yet. So I want to watch this fight and learn about both girls and see if Stoliarenko has made any improvements at all at 29 years old. But give me Stoliarenko round 1 armbar as a pick. Up next at middleweight, we've got a fun fight between Brendan Allen returning on very short turnaround to face Krzysztof Jotko. Allen, shockingly only 26 for all that he's accomplished so far. Brendan Allen is a very physically imposing middleweight at 6'2" and a 75-inch reach, but so is Jotko, just a little bit older at 33. The southpaw striker Jotko is 6'1" and a 77-inch reach. And, you give the UFC experience to Krzysztof Jotko. He's been around a while, 16 UFC fights versus the 9 UFC fights for Allen, 11-5 in those UFC bouts for Krzysztof Jotko. But if you break down really like the high caliber opponents that are, really making their mark in the organization, I'd say their wins are about equal for that kind of UFC experience. And as a matter of fact, Brendan Allen has been fighting nothing but like UFC caliber guys throughout his entire career, even in the LFA. All 5 of Brendan Allen's losses are to, guys like Trevin Giles, who are we talking about? Fluffy Hernandez, guys like this. And then, of course, in the UFC, Sean Strickland and Chris Curtis were able to give him trouble here. But a wide array of skills for Brendan Allen. And again, 26 years old, he's able to start blending together these skills, which he has not done in the past. I think he does it in this bout. He's got 10 submissions and 5 knockouts. The striking ability is night and day in the favor of Allen in this fight, in my opinion. The hand speed and just the dangerous threat of ending the fight with strikes goes in the favor of Brendan Allen. Now, this I'll give Krzysztof Jotko, a very crafty, elusive counter-striker of a kickboxer. Southpaw stance. He can really do well striking in the clinch, moving backwards or moving forward. Sometimes he does allow himself to get backed up, but he's got good lateral movement. And again, that southpaw stance, he's got that crafty lead right hook that often finds its mark and wobbles his opponents as they're advancing, gives them a little bit of trepidation to keep stalking him down. And Krzysztof Jotko loves to engage in the clinch, good knees and elbows there. And he does have a lot of takedowns, but if you look at a lot of his takedowns are against jiu-jitsu players that want to be on the ground. His last win over Gerald Meerschaert, that was the case. He was able to rack up, be the faster guy on the feet than Gerald Meerschaert, who's a jiu-jitsu player primarily. But Krzysztof Jotko, was able to get some takedowns once Gerald Meerschaert would accept that bottom position just to get it in his world on the mat. Same with, who else am I thinking of? Misha Serkinov last year was kind of the same deal, Jotko able to, get some ground time in because Misha Serkinov wanted to be there. Even as far back as like Talis Leites back in the day, another guy I think Krzysztof Jotko probably had some takedown defense, offense success with. So, the big powerful guys that, can really strike well will give Krzysztof Jotko trouble. Guys like Sean Strickland were able to defeat him. Guys like Brad Tavares able to defeat him. Even Uriah Hall was outstruck but managed to be powerful enough to end the fight. Brendan Allen, on the other hand, sometimes he goes into his opponent's wheelhouse. He strikes with Chris Curtis when he should just be really focused on taking him to the ground or staying really far away at range and use his size. Same with Sean Strickland, striking with him. He ended up getting finished in that fight by, I think it was like a standing TKO stoppage as well. I don't think he went fully out in that fight. But Brendan Allen, 26 years old. I can't stress enough how important that is. He's going to start blending these skills together. I think now is the time. He's got pretty good takedown defense. Not the best, takedown accuracy for Brendan Allen, but against guys that aren't like pure wrestlers like a Jacob Malkoun, I don't think that Krzysztof Jotko is going to have the tools to challenge Allen. He's not like a really elite offensive striker that's high output or very powerful. In fact, Krzysztof Jotko is 17-2 in decisions. So even taking guys like Alan Amadovsky to decision, he plays it safe. Also, not, as I mentioned, Jotko gets the takedowns off of guys who are usually willing to be put on their back. Brendan Allen is probably not going to have that much of trouble of using takedown defense against Jotko. So I think Allen will dictate where he wants this fight to play out. He's strong enough in the clinch to reverse positions and take this down to the ground. Maybe even get a club and sub at some point. I think this will stay standing until it goes poorly for Allen. Then he'll switch gears to jumping towards the, taking this fight to the mat. But, Allen's coming off of a very close fight, which is why I think this price tag is the way it is. He's about a plus 105 underdog right now. I think this is moving closer to a pick'em. I took a stab on Brendan Allen's money line when it peaked around plus 112 is the highest I got it at, and I put a stab on that. I can't get a good idea of if this ends inside the distance or not. I'm gonna lean towards no just because of how durable Jotko has been. Again, not facing the most explosive, powerful guys in a while, but he's 17-2 in decisions. You got to give that some respect there. Brendan Allen, he is a very potent finisher, but finishing 17 of 19 fights. So I think he gets this done inside the distance, but as far as a bet, I'm going to stay off the time props for this one. Give me Allen on the money line. I like him as a young underdog to blend his skills in this fight. Up next at bantamweight, this should be fireworks between Randy Costa and Guido Cannetti. How could it not be? These guys are very much kill or be killed fighters, and I can't believe how many guys that are in their 40s are on this card. Guido Cannetti at bantamweight is 42 years old, Randy Costa 28. Every tail of the tape, height, reach, and age goes in the favor of Randy Costa, who is 6-3. Surprisingly, not a lot of fights on his record, but Guido Cannetti, for being 42, only 9-6 as well. So Both guys finished in a lot of their losses. Both guys doing a lot of finishing in their wins. And I'll pull out my phone here and go over my DMs I had with Lou Bettia from the MMA Engine last night. He had a very good stat he sent my way. He says Randy Costa is 6-0 in fights that end under half of a round, and 0-3 in fights that go over half of a round. Guido Cannetti is 7-3 in fights that end in round 1, and 2-3 in fights that start round 2. So a little bit of a mixed bag there in results, but what this is saying is that the fight probably will not go to decision. The under 1.5 is probably in play, and I'm on the Costa by KO side here for a variety of reasons. Now, the money line is outrageous. Minus 300 on Randy Costa, plus 240 on Guido Cannetti. Won't be touching that money line at all. That is insane, because Randy Costa has not only had, his last 2 fights, he was doing very well early, and he blew it. Well, I guess the Tony Kelly fight, he did get clinched up quite a bit. That was part of Kelly's game plan. Clinch him up, crowd the kicker, and tire him out. By round 2, Tony Kelly was able to get some easy ground and pound, and Randy Costa pretty much quit in the fight. Before that, he had very good success, did Randy Costa, jabbing the face off of Adrian Yanez. And Yanez came back after surviving round 1. He came back in round 2. Costa was gassed. He got him out of there. I think a big uppercut eventually ended Randy Costa in round 2. Same with Brandon Davis in Randy Costa's debut. Unleashed hell on him early in round 1, got submitted in round 2. So I don't like the... I'm going to say it. I'm going to say the cliche everybody always says when they break down fights. Randy Costa is a very good hammer and a very bad nail. I hate that cliche, but, it has its purpose for this fight. Guido Cannetti is a guy who pretty dangerous in his own right. His cardio sucks, but he's coming off of that round 1 Moutinho win. Chris Moutinho was seen as the guy who survived against Sean O'Malley, took all of his best strikes. How is he going to get stopped? Well, he got stopped by standing TKO once again. I was on Cannetti. I was on Guido Cannetti that night, and he got that round 1 stoppage by a standing TKO. He's got solid thudding leg kicks and a very dangerous striker in his own right. But the thing that I favor Randy Costa is he's very good at advancing and leading the dance. He's got the long reach advantage, and he uses that reach well. That nice wide karate stance. He can balance pressure from the back leg to the front leg, uses that nice long jab, and then from an orthodox position, he'll jab you with it, and mid-combination, he'll switch stances, land that right leg, and then use that left hand that was a jab as a left cross. Very confusing mid-combination. Sets up his kicks very well, but look, he's a liability after that bell rings and it goes into round 2. So I can't trust him on that huge money line, but I can trust him to win this fight by KO because he likes to lead the dance. Guido Cannetti known to dance around the perimeter and let himself get cornered on the cage. So he's not a guy in Guido Cannetti where these days he's not clinching up, he's not crowding kickers, he's really taking the back foot and counter striking. So the guy is dangerous. This fight could end in round 1 on either guy's side. I think more often than not, the 28-year-old will get this job done. And give me Randy Costa for another round 1 KO. But Randy Costa, come on now. He's a minus 300. He's not a parlay piece. But I'd say fight doesn't go to decision. That's your parlay piece. Up next at lightweight, a pretty fun fight between 2 very talented guys. Mike Davis taking on Vyacheslav Borschev. Borschev is taking this fight on somewhat of short notice, filling in for Uroš Medic, who is going to fight Mike Davis at lightweight here. Mike Davis has not fought, I believe, since January of 2021. I think that was the Neil Magny, Michael Chiesa card, so it's been a while. And before that, he had taken off like a year and a half, too. So I don't like the inactivity, but I do like Mike Davis's athleticism, his power and ability in mixed martial arts. He's got a 3-0 boxing record, does Mike Davis. I think he started his combat sports career at Costa Yamato's gym. So obviously at 29 years old, he wasn't old enough to be coached under the tutelage of Mike Tyson's former trainer, but still cool to be linked to that type of lineage and, martial arts heritage there. And as a boxer, he's got a very nice long jab, good strikes to the body, and very good striking defense as well. Good kicks as well, good clinch work, and he's kind of like a talented, athletic enough guy to have picked up all aspects of mixed martial arts, even as a striking base. He's got good takedowns, decent wrestling and level changes, and he's got a very nice kicking game as well. Good question mark kick that finds its mark, and out of his 9 wins, he's got 7 knockouts. He also has the better, like elite MMA competitor experiencer, facing Sadiq Yusuff in his Dana White Contender Series bout, albeit unsuccessfully over 3 rounds, but then also making his debut against Gilbert Burns, where he lost by submission. So, the other high-level win was his most recent one a year and a half ago. Mason Jones, he beat over 3 rounds. And in both of Mike Davis's previous fights, he's landed over 100 significant strikes. So proven cardio, proven toughness against Mason Jones. He ate a lot of strikes. He's got good resiliency and picks up the pace as the fight goes on. So I like a lot of the things I see from Mike Davis, especially that wrestling ability, because Vyacheslav Borschev, although he's the Team Alpha Male striking coach, highly competent kickboxer, he's got very poor takedown defense. His takedown defense has given him his first loss professionally in the LFA against William Starks. Lost a very close decision there, all because of the wrestling that he lacks. Now, he also should have gotten a first-round knockout over Chris Duncan on the Contender Series. Had him in all sorts of trouble, could have finished the fight, but Chris Duncan able to just take him down, put Vyacheslav on his butt, and survive until he got knocked out in round 2. Then Borschev fought Dakota Bush earlier this year in his debut. Dakota Bush took him down instantly in that fight, had him in some sorts of trouble too with some damaging strikes before Borschev was able to turn it around 3 minutes into the first round. Used that devastating body shot and end the fight. So his body work is something to really admire. His lateral movement and good counters, even when he's being backed up, I admire that. His striking defense is decent, but I've seen more proven ability over 3 rounds, time and time again, from Mike Davis. High-level competition he's fought goes to Mike Davis. I'd say the boxing and hand speed is Mike Davis, but of course the kicking game I would give to Vyacheslav Borschev. But yeah, the wrestling is going to be the key difference here. You got to be a well-rounded mixed martial artist. I like Mike Davis. He seems to be the more athletic and talented guy here. The only thing giving me pause is just that long layoff, but he was supposed to fight Jai Herbert earlier this year in London. He cited not wanting to fight him for tax reasons. He said he wasn't going to make the same amount of money, and he also said he didn't like going to Abu Dhabi and just fighting overseas in general. It threw him off, he said. So I don't like him making those diva excuses this young in his career, but for Mike Davis here, I think he's the better guy. He was around minus 170. I put a couple units on that price tag. Vyacheslav Borschev currently about plus 155, the underdog, and Mike Davis has moved to about minus 200. So I still think that's playable. I think Davis wins by decision, just the accumulation of damage and better takedown, top control. But either guy is live to finish this fight as well. So I'm taking the Mike Davis money line. I think he wins this fight, and I think he's the more well-rounded, talented guy here. Okay, this should be a fast breakdown. At featherweight, Don Shainis making his debut on short notice, filling in for Giga Chikadze, I think, was supposed to fight Sadiq Yusuff. Complete mismatch. We're getting a debuting guy off of the Cage Titans regional scene, FAC promotion as well. Not fighting high level of competition. He is 13-3, fought 5 times in the past calendar year, 4 in 2022 alone. His last 3 fights have all been round 1 stoppages. Even over guys like the legendary Jay Ellis, who's had over 100 professional mixed martial arts bouts. I believe he's gone 10 and 120. So Sadiq Yusuff is, 12-2, 6 knockouts, 6-1 decisions. He's a ranked guy, which is why I don't understand why this is happening. He's 5-1 in the UFC, only losing to Arnold Allen so far. Takedown defense is pretty good, and that's going to be trouble for Don Shainis because Don Shainis is a wrestle boxer at 5'6", a 66.5-inch reach, very outsized in this matchup, both in height and reach. He is 31 years old. Yusuff is 29. So I think Sadiq Yusuff finishes this fight within 1 round by knockout. He's got heavy leg kicks. They're going to slow the attack of the wrestle boxer Don Shainis. Don Shainis relies getting all of his stoppages, most of them by grounding his opponents with takedowns, pretty much just hanging out in full guard, if not going into mount and raining down strikes until the ref calls it off. I mean, most of his opponents are so low level they can't get out of that position, get back up to their feet. I think his best wins are over Brian Barberina's brother Kevin and Cody Pfister, who got cut from the UFC back in 2016. So those are the only 2 notable names I saw on his record. He beat them both. Give me Sadiq Yusuff, heavy leg kicks early, and then kind of like a right cross right down the middle, the way that he knocked out Gabriel Benitez. Should be a pretty easy parlay piece, and Yusuff here, parlay him inside the distance or something if you've got to bet this fight. Up next at bantamweight is a fight between 2 of my favorite unranked guys at the weight class, Trevin 5-Star Jones and Raoni Barcelos. Another old bantamweight here in Raoni Barcelos at 35. That almost seems young after talking about Guido Cannetti a few fights ago at 42 years old. So 35 ain't looking so bad, but Trevin Jones, 32 himself, so still nearing the end of his prime. Let's start with Trevin Jones. The guy's 13-8 and one no contest. That no contest came in his debut 2 years ago on short notice against Timur Valiev. He was a big underdog. It got overturned because of his marijuana, but he absorbed 27 unanswered 100% power strikes by Timur Valiev after getting stunned by a body shot. A lot of referees would have stopped that, but Trevin Jones showed great heart, great resiliency, knocked out Timur Valiev in round 2, made an instant fan of me right then and there. He parlayed that success in his next fight against Mario Batista. Again, lost round 1, came back and got a nice uppercut over Mario Batista. A nice counter strike, not flatlined him in round 2. So he's a low output striker, and now he is kind of looking like he might have overperformed in those 2 fights, right? Because now he's lost 2 in a row. Kakhramonov beat him by round 3 sub, and Javid Basharat, who's a good prospect, 30-27 to him, outstruck him every minute of that fight. So now we're looking like his first 2 wins are actually more impressive than his last 2 losses. Raoni Barcelos is also coming off of 2 losses as well. Victor Henry most recently earlier this year, just better hand speed, better counters, outstruck him on the feet before Raoni Barcelos could even, think about wrestling in that fight. No time to turn that one around. And, who was before that? Timur Valiev, he had a majority decision loss to, after destroying Timur Valiev in round 1 with a couple knockdowns. A judge did score that as a draw, but ultimately Raoni Barcelos lost the fight. So, all of the skills that Trevin Jones does have besides his counter-striking, he's got competent BJJ. Trevin Jones has okay wrestling, but Raoni Barcelos is a champion in wrestling, a champion in BJJ. Never been knocked out either guy here, but Raoni Barcelos is way better of a minute winner, way better of a striker. He's got 7 UFC fights, averaging 6 significant strikes landed per minute in those, and averaging, I think, over 1.5 takedowns in 15 minutes. So he can control where the fight takes place. I just think the speed is for Raoni Barcelos. The experience, the wrestling, minute winning, striking output, everything goes in his favor, even the aggression, moving forward the whole time. I'd have to see a very, very different version of Trevin Jones and a very diminished version of Raoni Barcelos for this fight to go in Jones's favor, unless it's a puncher's chance, which is what I'm giving Trevin Jones. The underdog at plus 190, Raoni Barcelos around the minus 220, minus 230 mark. I put a moneyline bet on Raoni Barcelos at minus 210. I think he wins this fight. Since neither guy's been KO'd, I'd say Raoni Barcelos wins by decision, although we have seen Trevin Jones hurt before. I think it'll be a blend of wrestling and minute winning on the striking numbers that gives Barcelos the decision win here. Up next at bantamweight, we've got a fun fight between Daniel Willie Cat Santos and John Castaneda. Santos is making his 2nd walk to the cage, while Castaneda is making his 4th walk to the cage. Both guys right in the prime of their bantamweight careers, with Santos being 27 years old, Castaneda at 30 years old, and Castaneda is going to be an inch shorter, but he does have 4 inches of reach in his favor. Now, Willie Cat Santos is training out of that Diego Lima, not the fighter, but the coach, the Brazilian shoot-to-box camp, and he pretty much has that shoot-to-box classic style that they're known for. Constantly on the hunt, constantly advancing with wild, powerful strikes. Almost like a Vanderlei Silva style, but unlike, some of those guys of the past, Willie Cat Santos, a lot of spinning techniques, a lot of really big power shots that have a very small percent chance of landing, but if they do, they're devastating. So I like an advancing fighter, a guy who's hunting and aggressive, but for a technical guy like John Castaneda, he's going to be able to sort of circle off the cage and, pick apart Daniel Santos, in my opinion. So we saw that play out in Daniel Santos' debut against Julio Arce, where Arce was able to stay safe, stay out of harm's way for 3 rounds, and each round got easier and easier to predict when those strikes from Santos were coming. Obviously, Santos will have his best chance of victory in round 1, where those strikes do not have, they're not telegraphed, they're not having to be wound up as much. When he gets fatigued after all of missing those strikes in rounds 2 and 3, that's going to open up a lot of things. Not only can Castaneda counter him, but he can also employ some of the wrestling, and that wrestling's been the bane of existence for Santos in the past. In fact, out of his 2 losses, the one was a decision loss in his debut in the UFC to Arce, as I mentioned. He also lost to a guy named Murad Kalimov back in Russia, where he, I think that was the ACA promotion over there, a very powerful wrestler who was able to, stop the strikes just by getting Santos on his back. So that's in play for Castaneda as well. Castaneda just lost his debut to Nathaniel Wood a while back. That is not a bad loss to have. I mean, Wood is very good. He also knocked out Eddie Wineland, who actually that might mirror this fight a little bit as well. Eddie Wineland is a guy, long striker, very aggressive, pushes the pace and crowds, his opponents against the cage. Castaneda took a little bit of time to get his timing in that fight, but in round one he was able to, get that nice southpaw lead right hook counter, which, wobbled Wineland. Castaneda felt it affect him. He swarmed with blitzing 1-2, 1-2s, got some ground and pound, got him out of there. So he actually landed that same southpaw right lead hook counter against Miles Johns in his last fight, where he got a club and sub victory over Johns. But that lead hook was the one that really got the ending sequence going. So this is a thing where I like Castaneda's striking defense. I like his offense. I like his movement more than Santos. He's very slick with the footwork, able to circle off the cage, not get cornered there. And as such, Daniel Santos is a guy who's not good at really cutting the cage off in general. He throws these wild strikes and backs his opponents up, but he's not really cutting off the cage. He can end up chasing more than, trapping them there. So, again, live for the finish in round one for sure is Santos, and Castaneda can be a little bit slow in the first half of the round, data collecting, getting his timing right, but I'd say as this fight goes past the 2.5 minute mark of round one, into round two, into round three, Daniel Santos might not go out because he doesn't have that, aged, battle-worn chin that Eddie Wineland had, but he might just further get outstruck, further get out-wrestled even as this fight goes on. So give me Castaneda here pretty confidently. Minus 205 on the money line over Santos. I took a stab on his money line. I do like that. Pretty sizable bet on Castaneda. Sexy Mexi. The nickname doesn't hurt either. As the schedule stands right now for UFC Vegas 61, this is the co-main event of the evening. Randy Rude Boy Brown versus Francisco Trinaldo, Massaranduba. This is the second oldest fighter on the UFC roster, I believe. Alexei Oleinik, of course, the oldest we saw on this card earlier at 45. Francisco Trinaldo, 44. Spent most of his career at 155. This is his fourth fight at 170. 5'8", 70-inch reach. Giving up every tail of the tape advantage in this fight to Randy Brown, who's 6'3" at the weight class, 78-inch reach, 32 years old. So 12 years of youth. I mean, all of this, 8 inches of reach that he uses very well. Randy Brown is 15-4, been in the UFC 13 times, 9-4 record. He's been knocked out twice to very good guys in Vicente Luque and Nico Price. He's got 6 KOs of his own, 5 subs, 4-1 in decisions for Randy Brown. He's got solid takedown defense, not the best takedown offense, but he's got very good power and uses his range very well. And he's got the ability with his height at this weight class to actually seek submissions just from the leverage over his opponents. He'll get on the clinch position, take their back from the cage position, and as we saw against Cowboy Oliveira, use one arm to get the squeeze on that choke from a standing position. So, sometimes he can drag his opponents to the ground for these subs without actually having to, get a good takedown entry going. But I give Brown all of the advantages here, the size, the age, the output in the fight, and just the better opponents he's faced so far in the past, especially at welterweight, right? Trinaldo's fairly unproven at this weight class. He lost to Muslim Salikov, then he moved over to welterweight, and now he's coming off of 2 back-to-back wins. But they're against super low output guys that are, you could say these guys are actually a little bit of bums at the weight class, Dwight Grant, he even got deducted a point against Dwight Grant for an eye poke in round 3, still beat him by decision. That's how low output Dwight Grant is. He's able to even mix in some wrestling in that fight. Same with Danny Roberts, out-clinched him the whole time, was able to outstrike Danny Roberts earlier this year. Unanimous, all 3 rounds won for the 44-year-old. So, this guy is outsized for the weight class, though, let's be honest. He's facing Randy Brown. They're going to get Randy Brown back on track in this fight. I'm very confident. But am I confident enough to go minus 300 on Randy Brown here? And now it's even increasing. Plus 240 on Trinaldo. It always weirds me out when these guys like Trinaldo have all the experience, 25 UFC fights, and they are 14-5 in decisions, and still got power in his hands. So Trinaldo, he's going to try to get his way in range, throw some wild strikes that may or may not land, but he's getting closer, just wants to clinch up. I think Randy Brown's going to be way bigger, way stronger in the clinch. I don't see this going well for Trinaldo. I even think Randy Brown might be the first guy to finish Trinaldo. I'm going to call a Randy Brown round 3 knockout in this fight. But again, Trinaldo's never been finished officially so far by strikes. I'm just not comfortable paying that minus 300 on Randy Brown. Not a lot of extra value. Does he win this fight 75% of the time? Maybe, but where's the extra value on the money line? Maybe he's safe to parlay up, but even then, something about these old guys like Trinaldo edging out decisions, I don't think it's likely in this fight. Maybe Randy Brown is parlayable. I probably won't get there myself, but maybe there's an inside the distance prop that would be juicy for Randy Brown since Trinaldo has been so proven durable. But I think this might be the time that his age finally catches up to him. So like I said, give me Randy Brown, round 3 TKO. Okay, we've made it all the way to the main event of UFC Vegas 61. Hit that like, hit that subscribe, and let's break into Mackenzie Dern versus Yan Xiaonan at women's strawweight 115 bout. Big clash of styles here as well. Mackenzie Dern, obviously a world-renowned champion in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. She's got a 12-2 mixed martial arts pro record, but she's got over 100 grappling fights under her belt. And she's coming off of that Tecia Torres split decision win, which I thought she lost, actually. I mean, she got largely outstruck in rounds 1 and rounds 3, but she had Tecia Torres in all sorts of trouble for 4.5 minutes of submission hunting in round 2. But ultimately coming off of a win technically. Before that, she lost a 5-round, her only 5-round bout to date over Marina Rodriguez last year, where she got beat down for the majority of a 5-round fight, outstruck by the elite striker in Rodriguez. So Mackenzie Dern, of course, is a specialist if there ever is one. She's dangerous if she gets the fight to the ground. 7 submissions over 12 wins, right? And it's her aggressive striking that's letting her close the distance to get this fight in the clinch, where she can eventually tie up a limb of her opponent. But that's really all her striking is. It's aggressive. It is a little bit high output, but it's sloppy. You see the fundamentals of it improving here and there, but her best punch is still probably that very sloppy, wild overhand right that somehow finds its mark a lot of the time, can stun her opponent just long enough for her to get in range and close the distance there. So her takedown accuracy is a shocking 9% on the UFC stats. That's just horrendous. But like I mentioned, she does have other ways of getting the fight to the mat than just the takedown on its own. Also to mention, every submission from Mackenzie Dern, except for 1, so 6 out of 7 have been in round 1. And a lot of the times, it's her opponent following her to the ground, right? Like Ronda Marcos, round 1 armbar. Hannah Cyphers, a round 1 knee bar. Nina Nunes, a round 1 armbar as well. So not the best win streak. There was a Verna Jandiroba decision win, which was pretty impressive, on paper. So that was the win streak going into the Marina Rodriguez fight. Not the best streak of wins, I gotta say. Not showing a whole lot as far as like a well-rounded fighter, but she's got one trick and she's good at it. Now, I'll give her the BJJ, I'll give her the finishing ability, I'll even give her the 5-round experience, but I give Yan the striking by far and away. Yan Xiaonan is a Chinese prospect coming off of that Sanda background, Chinese kickboxing background with great boxing and great feints. Very efficient distance management. She's never out of position. She knows just how to never overreact when her opponents strike her. Just move her head slightly out of the way and counter without moving wildly. So I like her timing. I like her power in her strikes, and her output is something like 5.6 significant strikes per minute landed, and she's only struck back like 3 times in return. So hugely positive striking differential in her favor. The exact opposite is true for Mackenzie Dern. So we're looking at a minute winner in Yan Xiaonan and Mackenzie Dern, who wins moments whenever she can lock up a submission. So and then you got to look at Mackenzie Dern when she gets the fights in top position, when she's in the driver's seat on top. Is she really doing much damage? Not so much. She's really just hunting for limbs because she knows, how to set up those positions to win the fight. But if that submission never comes, she has not inflicted any damage on her opponent. So even in the clinch positions, I think Yan Xiaonan's going to be strong enough to reverse those. And she's got very good knees and very good uppercuts in the clinch, does Yan Xiaonan. So I got to take the underdog here. We're looking at plus 175, moved all the way to plus 190. I'm seeing plus 195 for Yan Xiaonan. Very good price on her, I think. Mackenzie Dern moving all the way from minus 225 as high as minus 250 at this point, even early in the week. I don't like that over a 5-round fight where Mackenzie Dern's going to look so desperate later in the fight. Her striking offense and defense unravels. Her technique unravels as she gets tired, even in 3-round fights, much less a 5-round fight. Yan Xiaonan is going to have so much fun outpointing her in this fight, as long as she can stay safe off of the ground. So there are going to be moments where she gets tied up. Mackenzie Dern jumps on her. As long as she can kind of play, the Marina Rodriguez game plan here and follow that blueprint, she can beat Mackenzie Dern. I like the power. I'm not saying that she finishes Mackenzie Dern. I think it's live, but I'm just going to take Yan Xiaonan on the money line. I do have a bet on her. I saw that once it peaked this weekend at plus 190, and I see it going even higher than that. So, just a unit stab on that for me. I might add a small sprinkle on her by decision if that prop drops a little bit higher, because I do like her to win this fight, and I like her to, win most of the moments here. We've got almost like the puncher's chance for Mackenzie Dern, and yes, she gets it done, but you're looking at once she gets these steps up in competition, it's not going too well for her. I put Yan Xiaonan in that category of the Marina Rodriguez, right? She just had a very close fight with her. And the only time Yan Xiaonan has lost recently has just been to an elite wrestler and elite striker. I don't see Mackenzie Dern as either of those two things. Give me Yan Xiaonan as a main event underdog. I do have a money line bet on her at plus 190. Okay, there you have it, you guys. All 13 fights broken down for UFC 61. Mackenzie Dern versus Yan Xiaonan in the main event. I pointed out the moneyline spots I have so far. I'll be adding, of course, props once those drop, but I wanted to get those breakdowns out just a little bit earlier since I've missed talking UFC fights after that week off. Again, remember, go over to Cody from Blood Money MMA Bets channel. Give him a subscribe along with Johnny K Picks. All three of us will be on Cody's channel this Saturday doing that live stream Fight Companion. I can't wait for that. It'll be my first time doing a format like that. Also on my channel on Wednesday, check out me and Wiz Bets talking these fights from a props perspective on Wednesday night, 11 p.m. Central Time. Hit that like, hit that subscribe, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Cheers.